Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll.
A bored girl on a summer afternoon sees a white rabbit in a waistcoat. Check a pocket watch and mutter, "Oh dear." That's all it takes. Alice follows and tumbles down a rabbit hole that becomes a slow-motion well lined with cupboards and marmalade jars. While falling, she tries to apply schoolroom logic to a dreamlike plunge, hinting at the joke of Wonderland. Rules are rituals, but they don't rule here. She lands in a hall ringed with locked doors, finds a tiny key to a beautiful garden she can't reach, and discovers two instructions: drink me and eat me. One shrinks her, the other makes her enormous. The simple act of getting through a door becomes a lesson in proportion. Identity, mood, and confidence swell and shrink with her size. She cries a pool of tears so large she nearly drowns in them, then joins a motley crew, Mouse, Dodo, and friends, who dry off with a nonsensical caucus race where everyone wins and no one learns anything. It's politics and process without purpose, presented with a grin. The white rabbit reappears and mistakes Alice for his housemaid, Marianne. Inside his cottage, she sips another bottle and rockets upward, filling the rooms until a glove becomes a tent, and she has to kick a lizard named Bill up the chimney to get unstuck. Pebbles tossed through the window turn into little cakes that shrink her back down. In Wonderland, cause and effect feel like a prank, but the system still responds to inputs. Alice is learning to test the rules, even if the rules are absurd. On a mushroom, a blue caterpillar smokes a hookah and asks the book's central question, "Who are you?" Alice's answer keeps changing, literally as the mushroom's two sides make her grow and shrink at will. The caterpillar's indifference is the harshest teacher. He doesn't explain meaning. He hands her a tool. Now Alice can control her size, and the story subtly shifts. She's less at the mercy of Wonderland's mechanics and more able to navigate them. She meets a pepper-dusted duchess whose cook throws everything but the baby, and a Cheshire cat who can appear as just a grin. "We're all mad here," he says, pointing Alice to the March Hare or the Hatter. Madness in Wonderland is just a different calibration of rules. Everyone's following some inner logic, even if it clashes with common sense. At the Mad Tea Party, time itself has gone on strike. The March Hare and the Hatter circle a long table, shouting, "No room!" and switching chairs every few minutes to avoid washing the cups. Riddles have no answers. Why is a raven like a writing desk? And the dormouse drifts in and out of a story about three sisters living in a treacle well. It's social satire in miniature, a meeting that moves constantly but goes nowhere, where rituals replace outcomes. Alice pushes back, frustrated. The first signs of a voice that will, by the end, refuse nonsense even on nonsense's own terms. Seeking the garden she glimpsed at the start, Alice finally arrives, only to find it run by playing cards. The Queen of Hearts rules with reflexive executions. Off with their heads. Croquet here is chaos. Hedgehogs for balls, flamingos for mallets, arches that walk away, and a queen whose anger changes the rules mid-swing. The Cheshire Cat returns as just ahead, raising a legal puzzle. Can you behead what has no body? It's a perfect Wonderland problem, logic tossed into a whirlwind of authority. Enter the Griffin and the Mock Turtle, who embody melancholy parody. They teach Alice the lobster quadrille, a dance that's all left turns and backward steps, and recite lessons from school that sound like puns stretched to breaking, reeling and writhing, ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. Childhood here is a curriculum of near meanings, and Alice's attempts to recite familiar poems come out scrambled, her memory warped by the world's rules. You sense the book's gentle ache, the way growing up disorients even as it clarifies. Everything funnels to a trial. The Knave of Hearts is accused of stealing the Queen's tarts. The jurors write their names down so they won't forget who they are. Evidence arrives in the form of a letter full of nonsense, so vague it's treated as proof. The king wants sentence first, verdict afterwards. As the procedure gets more ridiculous, Alice, now growing again, gains courage in direct proportion to her size. She challenges the court and the Queen's authority, and when the whole deck surges at her, she says the line that breaks the spell: "They're nothing but a pack of cards." She wakes on the riverbank, head in her sister's lap, the tea party of reality resumed. Rustling reeds, sleepy sunlight. It was a dream, and yet the book lingers in the way her sister imagines Alice as a grown woman who keeps her childhood wonder alive and shares it with other children. Wonderland is both satire and sanctuary, nonsense that exposes the brittle rules of sense. Why does this story endure? Because it captures something essential about growing up: the confusion of changing size, too small to reach the key, too big to fit the door, the pressure to obey rules that contradict themselves, the discovery that words can be games and power can be arbitrary. Alice's journey is less an arc of conquest than of calibration. She moves from bewildered participant to assertive observer, learning when to play along and when to call the game. The phrase "down the rabbit hole" has come to mean any plunge into a complex world, but the book's deeper offer is a compass. Curiosity as the engine, language as the terrain, and your own judgment as the way out. Lewis Carroll loads every chapter with puzzles, puns, reversals, riddles that refuse tidy endings, so the narrative feels like a series of experiments. Drink this, eat that, ask a question, sit through a tea party, swing a flamingo. What breaks? What bends? Alice tests the boundaries until she finds the one lever that matters, the courage to name nonsense. Only then does the dream collapse. In a world still full of shape-shifting rules, that's a lesson that lands. So if you're reading for story, it's a sprint of scenes. Rabbit, fall, doors, tears, race, house, mushroom, cat, tea, croquet, trial, wake. If you're reading for meaning, it's a meditation on identity and agency, dressed in jokes. And if you're reading for the sheer pleasure of language, it's a playground where every sign points in two directions and the fun is in choosing. Defining line. Follow curiosity. Stand tall against nonsense.